High-speed rail is a key component of President Obama's domestic policy. Now, 4 years ago, he announced with great fanfare that his administration was using $8 billion in stimulus funds as seed money to get high-speed rail projects off the ground. An additional $1 billion would then be spent annually. The president even mentioned high-speed rail again in his State of the Union address just last month, saying that it should be part of a key part of repairing America's aging infrastructure. But keep it honest, billions in federal tax dollars have been spent so far with very little to show for it. 360 has been investigating some of these projects, like the billions spent in California without one shovel being put into the ground, or the tens of millions spent on high-speed rail in mountainous Vermont, where very few people ride trains to begin with. Tonight, our investigation focuses on a project in the Pacific Northwest that cost a lot. You can decide if that expenditure was worth it. Here's Drew Griffin.
So now, for one of his last speeches in this position, the Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood.
In a half-filled conference room, Transportation Secretary Ray LaHood tried to rally hope that his dream and the president's dream of high-speed rail would become a reality. But that dream, shared by those here who stand to make money from high-speed rail, is turning into a pipe dream.
This has been an extraordinary 4 years for high-speed rail.
What is extraordinary is just how much money federal taxpayers have dumped into high-speed rail while the trains are still slow. 4 years and $12 billion after that pledge to bring high-speed rail across America, the slow trains are just moving a little faster.
And one of the greater examples of that is what happened in Washington State.
Yes, we received in our state $800 million.
Paula Hammond was the state's transportation secretary until recently retiring. Washington State got $800 million from the federal government. That's your tax money, mainly for improving the track between Seattle and Portland. And what did you get for it? Over a 3-hour and 40-minute ride, the trip has been reduced by 10 minutes.
10 minutes doesn't sound like a lot of time, but when you think about the fact that you have more options for more round trips, that you know that the train will come and go reliably and on time, that to us is what our passengers tell us is the most important thing.
All aboard! In fact, 10 minutes isn't a lot of time. And Paula Hammond says despite promises of high-speed rail from Washington, D.C., it was never Washington State's intention of bringing high-speed rail like the bullet trains of Japan and Europe to this section of the country. The top speed here is now 79 miles an hour. Average speed is in the low 50s.
I don't know whether we'll ever want high-speed rail, high-speed rail. What we want in our state and in our West Coast region between Oregon and Washington, we want the ability of our communities to be connected so that we can provide good travel, a daily business trip between Seattle and Portland, and the opportunity not to have to fight traffic.
Thank you.
That is a far cry from the vision of high-speed rail announced by the President, the Vice President, and the Secretary of Transportation back in 2009, when Americans were told Japanese and European-style trains would connect our cities.
What we're talking about is a vision for high-speed rail in America.
$12 billion later, that vision has churned out 134 scattered projects across the country that have mostly made slow trains a little faster. Keeping them honest, we wanted to know why. And after his speech to the High-Speed Rail Association, we were given a brief interview with outgoing Secretary of Transportation Ray LaHood.
I'm wondering, after 4 years and $12 billion spent, if you're disappointed at where high-speed rail is. Where is the high-speed rail?
The high-speed rail, in 4 years, we've invested $12 billion. That's just the federal money.
But so much of the money has been spent really making the old trains go a little bit faster. Seattle to Portland.
Oh, I think 110 is pretty fast.
But Seattle to Portland, you've spent $800 million, and the trip time has been reduced by 10 minutes.
Well, I think people like the investments we're making. There's so much enthusiasm in America for high-speed rail. We've been at it 4 years. We've invested $12 billion. We've seen these investments get trains to higher speeds. We've seen these investments improve service. We've seen these investments improve on-time service to the point where now Amtrak is at an all-time ridership high. Without these investments, I don't think that would have happened.
But you want true high-speed rail, right? You don't want
in some parts of the country
trains going a little bit faster.
In some parts of the country, we're going to have trains going 200 miles an hour.
When?
As soon as we can get the kind of work that needs to be done started.
What that is exactly is unclear. There is only one true high-speed rail line actually envisioned in the entire United States. It's the California plan to bring a 200-mile-an-hour train from San Francisco to Los Angeles. It's been in the planning stages for nearly 10 years, and not a single piece of rail has been laid. Back in Seattle, one day they do hope to reach speeds of perhaps 110 miles an hour in some sections of the track, but at what price? What we do know, this year federal taxpayers will send out another $1 billion for high-speed rail.
Drew Griffin joins us now. So the Secretary of Transportation kept talking about the goal of high-speed rail in the future. I mean, what is the goal if not to build high-speed rail now?
Anderson, he talks about high-speed rail in terms of the interstate highway system of the 50s, saying what they are doing now with high-speed rail is similar to that system, which it started in bits and pieces and chunks and eventually, after decades, tied together. Now, what critics will say, both for and against this high-speed rail, we're not building pieces of high-speed rail. We're just wasting high-speed rail money fixing up old slow rail.
And it's one thing, I mean, if you just set out and said, you know what, we want to make a 60-mile-an-hour train go 70 miles an hour. We want to cut 10 minutes off of this time, and then people could judge whether that's, worth it for the $800 million. But if you're selling it as high-speed rail, that seems almost misleading. I mean, people are still riding trains. People still like trains. As the guy said, Amtrak, use is up.
Yeah, true, but is it wise? And getting to your point, Anderson, this was sold as high-speed rail. People thought they were getting high-speed rail, the bullet trains. That's what they're selling. That's what they're showing to us. But if you look at what was happening in Washington State, right now, after $800 million, it's still cheaper and many times faster to take the Greyhound bus from Seattle to Portland. So what was that investment all about? It wasn't about high-speed rail. It was just about fixing up Amtrak, fixing up the low-speed rail, and really making freight trains move a little better, but not high-speed rail.
As we mentioned in the introduction to this program, this is the third piece you've done on this issue. After the last one, we got thousands of emails, basically email bombed. Who's behind that? Because they were very critical.
Yeah, they are very critical, and we reached out to them and talked to them. There's a network of people who really do believe deep down. They're rail enthusiasts. They believe in the idea of bringing the Japanese or the European-style trains here to the U.S. But as we have explained to them, even after we got email bombed, look, you're not getting high-speed rail, and they will admit it. They will admit that this administration is not investing in the actual bullet trains like the ones that they believe will bring us into the future of transportation. It's not what we're getting, Anderson.
All right, Drew, appreciate it.